Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. The thing about being forgotten by an entire galactic government is that it happens slowly, then all at once. Amara stood in what generously could be called a research outpost, and what honestly should have been called that dump on Dustfall 6, where we stuck the problem we didn't want to deal with. The walls were prefab polymer that had seen better decades. The life support system wheezed like a chain smoker climbing stairs. And the communication array? Well, that flickered on and off with all the reliability of a politician's promise. But hey, at least the view was nice. If you liked rust-colored dirt stretching to every horizon, punctuated by the occasional rock formation that looked vaguely obscene if you squinted. Amara, Amara. Null took my datapad again. The diplomat turned to find Fricks, all 6 limbs gesticulating wildly in that way that would be adorable if each of those limbs couldn't literally tear through reinforced steel plating. The young Gwillora's crystalline eyes flashed amber with annoyance, her fur bristling along her spine in that telltale pattern that meant someone was about to get tackled. "Null!" Amara called out, not even bothering to raise her voice. "If I have to come find you, I'm rationing the jerky for a week." A guilty shuffling sound emanated from behind the supply crates. Moments later, Null slunk into view, the datapad clutched in his front paws, his massive frame somehow managing to look sheepish, despite being roughly the size of a small cargo shuttle. For a species that could hunt megafauna across ice plains and had historically been the apex predator on every continent of their homeworld, the Gwillora cubs had mastered the art of looking pathetically innocent when caught red-handed. "I was just borrowing it," Null mumbled, his translator necklace converting his growling vocalizations into passable coalition standard. "She left it in the common area. For 5 minutes while I went to use the facilities." Fricks's tail lashed back and forth. "You don't just take things. That's the whole point of property rights that Amara keeps trying to teach us." "Oh, good. Someone was listening during that lecture." Amara held out her hand. "Datapad. Now. And Fricks, we've talked about the whole volume control thing when you're upset, right? Remember? Inside voices don't shatter windows." The young Gwillora had the decency to look embarrassed, her fur settling down to its normal sleek pattern. Null handed over the datapad with obvious reluctance, then perked up immediately. "Is it time for language lessons?" "Nice try. It's time for structural maintenance checks." Amara pulled up her own battered datapad, scrolling through a list that seemed to grow longer every day. "Which means you 3 get to help me figure out why the water reclamation system is making that sound." "What sound?" Poom emerged from the sleeping quarters, the youngest of the 3 cubs rubbing his eyes with one paw. His translator was slightly off calibration, giving his words a tinny quality. "I don't hear anything weird." "That's because you sleep through everything, including that time Null accidentally set off the fire suppression system." Fricks rolled her crystalline eyes in a gesture she'd picked up from watching Amara. It was equal parts endearing and unsettling to see a massive predator species adopt human mannerisms. "Some of us have working ears." "My ears work fine. They're just selective." Amara bit back a smile. 4 months. 4 months since she'd arrived at this forgotten corner of Coalition space with 3 traumatized Gwillora cubs who'd watched their entire colony get bombed into radioactive glass by extremist factions who thought the universe would be better off without predator species. 4 months of teaching them coalition standard, basic mathematics, interspecies etiquette, and how to not accidentally break everything they touched, because growing cubs didn't quite understand their own strength yet. 4 months of supply ships that were supposed to arrive every 3 weeks, but hadn't shown up in 8. 4 months of outgoing messages to Coalition Command that disappeared into the bureaucratic void like tears in the rain. Poetic. Useless, but poetic. All right, team. Amara clapped her hands together. Maintenance time. Null, you're on wrench duty. Fricks, you're documenting everything on the datapad. And Poom, you're my light source because the portable illuminators died last week, and apparently replacement parts are on back order until the heat death of the universe. Can we have jerky after? Null's ears perked up with hope. We're rationing. You know this. But we're helping with maintenance. You live here. Maintenance is called not wanting the walls to collapse on us in our sleep. It's in everyone's best interest. Amara headed toward the access panel that led down to the facility's guts, the cubs trailing behind her with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Besides, we're down to 32 packs, and I have no idea when the next supply run is coming. You said that about the last supply run, Fricks pointed out, and the one before that. Yes, well, I'm an optimist. It's a character flaw. The access panel groaned in protest as Amara yanked it open, revealing a ladder that descended into darkness. Also, I'm technically required by Coalition Charter to maintain hope that the bureaucracy will remember we exist. It's in my contract. Page 63, subsection, Comforting Lies Diplomats Tell Themselves. Poom's laugh was a rumbling sound that vibrated through his chest. You made that up. Prove it. You haven't read your Coalition Charter handbook. Amara began climbing down, her boots clanging against metal rungs. Which, by the way, is assigned reading for tomorrow. The whole thing. Yes, null, including the boring parts, especially the boring parts. Character building. The groans of protest from above were music to her ears. The thing was, Amara knew exactly what she'd signed up for. Mid-level diplomat, decent record, nothing spectacular. The kind of person who got assigned to problems that were simultaneously important enough to need someone, but not important enough to waste actual resources on. When Coalition Command had asked for volunteers to oversee the Gwalora refugee resettlement, most of her colleagues had suddenly discovered urgent business elsewhere. Predator species made people nervous. Predator species with a history of territorial warfare made them more nervous. Predator species who'd been nearly genocided and might have some understandable anger issues? That made everyone nervous, except the people who thought the genocide hadn't gone far enough. So naturally, the solution was to stick 3 orphaned cubs on a forgotten outpost with minimal supervision and hope the problem solved itself through benign neglect. Amara had looked at the assignment, looked at the pathetic stipend, looked at the fact that she'd essentially be alone on a planet that barely qualified as habitable, looked at the 3 cubs in the briefing hollows with their crystalline eyes and traumatized body language, and she'd said yes. Because someone had to give a damn. Might as well be her. The water reclamation system was, predictably, a disaster. Not a catastrophic disaster. More like a slow-motion disaster that had been building for weeks, and was now reaching its crescendo of dysfunction. Amara lay on her back in a puddle of something that was probably water, but she wasn't going to examine too closely, wrestling with a pipe joint that had corroded in ways that defied metallurgical science. "Hand me the molecular sealant," she called up to where Null was holding the toolkit, with surprising delicacy for someone with paws the size of dinner plates. The what? The tube with the blue label that says molecular sealant on it. Oh, that. Null rummaged through the kit. We're out. We can't be out. I specifically inventoried. Amara trailed off, remembering. Right. The inventory she'd done was based on the supply list from 2 shipments ago. The shipments that never arrived. Okay, Plan B, hand me the adhesive compound. Also out. Industrial tape? Does it count if it's mostly used up and the rest is stuck to itself? Amara closed her eyes and counted to 10 in 3 different languages. It was a meditation technique she'd learned during diplomatic training. It mostly just gave her time to think of creative profanity in multiple tongues. Fricks, please tell me you're getting all this documented for when I file my official complaint with command. Every word, Fricks confirmed from her position near Poom's light source, including the part where you just called the Coalition Logistics Department a collection of quotes, administratively incompetent, potato-brained desk jockeys who couldn't organize a supply run if their lives depended on it, which thankfully they don't, because some of us are out here actually doing the work. I said that out loud? You did. Good. Make sure it's time-stamped. Amara wiggled out from under the pipe, soaked and annoyed. All right, new plan. We're going to jury-rig this with parts from the backup oxygen scrubber. Noel's ears flattened against his skull. Is that safe? Define safe. Amara was already heading toward the storage lockers. If you mean, will it work? Probably. If you mean, is it up to Coalition safety standards? Absolutely not. If you mean, do we have literally any other choice? I'm open to suggestions. Silence from the cubs. That's what I thought. Poom, bring the light. Fricks, start a new section in the documentation titled Why Everything Here is Held Together with Hope and Spite. 2 hours later, the water reclamation system was functioning again. Functioning was perhaps generous. It was making noises and producing water, which was technically the definition of functioning even if the noises suggested imminent mechanical death, and the water had a slightly alarming tint. Is it supposed to be that color? Poom stared at the output with justified concern. It'll run clear in a minute. Probably. Maybe. Look, we'll run it through the filtration system 3 times and call it good enough. Amara wiped her hands on a rag that was somehow dirtier than her hands. And this, cubs, is what we call adaptive problem-solving, which is diplomatic speak for making it up as we go. I thought you said humans were good at engineering, Noel observed. We are. This is engineering. It's just not particularly elegant engineering. Amara hauled herself up the ladder, every muscle protesting. She was in decent shape for a diplomat, which meant she was in terrible shape by military standards, and even worse shape compared to a species that could run down prey for 3 days straight without stopping. Besides, you want to know the secret of human success in the Coalition? What? All 3 cubs looked up at her with those unnerving crystalline eyes. We're really, really good at making things work with insufficient resources and no support. It's basically our species-defining trait. She reached the top of the ladder and offered a hand to help pull Noel up, then realized the absurdity of a human trying to pull a creature 3 times her weight. Noel politely pretended to need the assistance anyway. That and spite. Never underestimate the power of spite. Spite? The desire to prove everyone wrong by succeeding when they expect you to fail. It's a hell of a motivator. They emerged back into the main living area, which looked exactly as ramshackle as when they'd left it. Prefab walls that had seen better decades. Furniture that was a creative mix of original equipment and improvised repairs. A communication console that blinked with error, messages like a particularly pessimistic holiday decoration. Home, sweet home. All right, Amara checked her chronometer. It's late. Well, It's late by our arbitrary schedule since this planet doesn't have a proper day-night cycle. But we're calling it late. Everyone clean up, then we'll have dinner." "What's for dinner?" Poom asked with the eternal optimism of youth. "Protein rations with a side of protein rations, followed by protein ration dessert." "Again?" "Unless you've got a supply ship hidden somewhere. Yes, again." Amara was already pulling out the packages from their dwindling stores. "Look at it this way. When the next shipment finally arrives, actual food is going to taste like the most amazing thing you've ever eaten. It's all about managing expectations." The cubs grumbled but complied, heading to the washroom to clean up. Amara watched them go, these massive predators who still carried themselves with the uncertain gait of children, and felt that familiar twist in her chest. They deserved better. Better facility. Better food. Better support. Better everything. They deserved to not be forgotten on the ass end of coalition space with a diplomat who was winging it on a daily basis. But this was what they had. So she'd make it work. Because that's what humans did. They made it work. Amara was halfway through preparing the least depressing presentation possible of protein rations when the communication console stopped blinking error messages and started blinking something else entirely. Proximity alert. She froze, staring at the screen. Then slowly, carefully, she set down the protein ration package and walked to the console. Probably just a supply ship. Finally. After weeks of delays, they'd remembered the forgotten outpost existed. But supply ships didn't trigger proximity alerts. They sent approach signals, requested docking clearance, followed proper protocols. This was something else. Amara pulled up the external sensors, such as they were. The outpost's detection system was about as sophisticated as a child's toy telescope, but it was enough to paint a basic picture. Multiple vessels. Small. Fast. Following an approach vector that was definitely not standard procedure. "Cubs!" she called out, keeping her voice carefully neutral. "Change of plans. Dinner's delayed. Everyone to the common room. Now." They emerged from the washroom, picking up on her tone immediately. Null's fur was already starting to bristle. "What's wrong?" "Probably nothing. Maybe something. We're going to assume something and hope for nothing." Amara pulled up the facility schematic on her datapad. "Remember those emergency drills we practiced? The ones you said were probably unnecessary, but better safe than sorry?" Fritz's eyes had shifted from their normal blue to an alarmed orange. "Those ones exactly. We're doing them for real. Right now. Because the thing about being forgotten by your government was that it didn't just mean no supply ships. It meant no protection, no support, no one checking to make sure you were okay. It meant you were on your own. And someone, somewhere, had just remembered that this outpost existed after all. The maintenance tunnels beneath the outpost smelled like recycled air, rust, and regret. Amara had discovered them 3 weeks into her assignment while trying to find where the power conduits kept shorting out. Turned out the facility had been built on top of an older mining operation, which meant a whole network of passages that didn't show up on any official schematic. At the time, she'd thought it was interesting. Now, she thought it was life-saving. "Stay quiet. Stay together. Stay put until I come get you." Amara pressed the emergency supply pack into Null's paws. Water, rations, a basic medical kit, and one of the 2 working handheld communicators. "You remember the protocol? 12 hours. If you don't come after 12 hours, we use the communicator to signal coalition distress frequency." Null's voice was steady, but his eyes had shifted to deep red. Fear response. Then we wait another 12 hours. If still nothing, we use the eastern tunnel to reach the old mining facility and hide there. Good. That's good. Amara squeezed his shoulder, feeling the corded muscle beneath the fur. In another few years, Nal would be fully grown, an apex predator capable of taking down prey 3 times his size. Right now, he was a scared kid, trying to be brave. Fricks, Poom, you stay with Nal. Whatever happens, you 3 stick together. What about you? Poom's voice was small, younger than his usual bravado. I'm going to go see who's dropping by unannounced and convince them that visiting hours are over. Amara tried for a smile. It probably looked more like a grimace. Maybe it's just a supply ship with a broken transponder. Maybe it's pirates looking for easy salvage. Either way, you're safer down here. You should come with us, Fricks insisted. If it's dangerous, you should hide too. Someone needs to buy you time if things go wrong. And between the 4 of us, I'm the most expendable. Amara held up a hand before they could protest. That's not self-pity. That's tactics. You 3 are what matters here. You're kids. You deserve a chance to grow up. My job is to make sure you get that chance. The sounds of landing ships reverberated through the facility's walls. Multiple vessels, by the sound of it. Amara's stomach clenched. Go! Now! She practically shoved them deeper into the tunnel, watched them disappear into the darkness with Poom's bioluminescent patches providing just enough light to navigate. Then she sealed the access panel, scattered some debris over it to make it look undisturbed, and headed back up to the main level. Time to see what fresh disaster the universe was serving up today. The external cameras gave her a front-row seat to the worst-case scenario. 6 vessels, all bearing the same marking. A stylized skull wreathed in smoke. Wraith Collective. Mercenaries. Guns for hire. The kind of people who took contracts that legitimate military forces wouldn't touch. The kind of people who got paid to finish what genocidal extremists started. Amara pulled up the internal defense systems, then laughed bitterly at herself. Defense systems. Right. This facility had exactly one. A door lock that was maybe 30 years old and definitely not rated for determined assault. Everything else, the weapons lockers, the shield generators, the automated defenses, all of it had been stripped out when the outpost was decommissioned as a military installation and repurposed for research. Research was peaceful. Research didn't need guns. Research was also apparently a polite way of saying, dumping ground for problems we don't want to deal with. The main airlock cycled with a hiss. Amara stood in the center of the common room, hands visible, posture deliberately non-threatening. Maybe this was a misunderstanding. Maybe they were just, what? Lost. Looking for directions? 20 armed figures poured through the airlock, weapons raised, moving with the practiced efficiency of people who killed for a living. So much for misunderstandings. Well, Amara said conversationally, this is either a really aggressive census check, or I'm about to have a very bad day. Please tell me it's the census thing. The leader, a Dralix male with cybernetic enhancements that probably cost more than the entire outpost, stepped forward. His weapon, some kind of plasma rifle that looked like it could vaporize a shuttle, was pointed casually at her chest. Amara, human diplomat. Mid-level, unremarkable record, assigned to Gwilora Refugee Oversight. You've done your homework. I'm touched. She kept her hands visible, kept her voice light. Though I have to say, if you wanted an appointment, you could have just called ahead. We're pretty casual about protocol out here. Where are they? The leader's translator gave his words a mechanical edge. The Gwilora cubs, 3 juveniles, ages 8 to 11 standard cycles. Where? You're going to have to be more specific. I oversee a lot of refugees. A lie. A pointless lie that bought maybe 30 seconds. But 30 seconds was 30 seconds. The leader's weapon didn't waver. We have thermal scanners. We know there are 4 life signs in this facility. You're 1. That leaves 3. He gestured, and several mercenaries began spreading out, scanners in hand. You can make this easy or hard. Outcome's the same either way. Let me guess, Amara said, still keeping that conversational tone even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Someone paid you to finish what those extremist nut jobs started. Wipe out the Guilora. Make sure there's no chance of the species recovering. Very thorough. Very genocidal. Very illegal under about 15 different coalition laws. Coalition laws. The leader actually laughed. Coalition abandoned this outpost months ago. No supply ships. No check-ins. No support. You're not under coalition protection anymore. You're just, what's the human phrase? Collateral damage. Collateral implies accident. This seems pretty intentional. One of the Tiger mercenaries was heading toward the storage area, toward the scattered debris that hid the access panel. Amara's mind raced. Look, whatever you're getting paid, I can double it. With what? This facility's budget wouldn't cover our fuel costs. Then how about this? You leave, I don't report this to Coalition Command, and everyone walks away with their lives and legal records intact. She was backing up slowly, drawing attention to herself, away from the access panel. Seems like a fair trade. Your distress signals have been going out for 8 weeks. The leader's smile was not pleasant. No one's coming. No one cares. Coalition has bigger problems than 3 predator cubs and a diplomat they already wrote off. He wasn't wrong. That was the thing. He was absolutely, completely, devastatingly not wrong. But here's the thing about spite. It doesn't care about logic. Well then, Amara said, and dove for the weapons locker. She didn't make it. Didn't even come close. Plasma rifle shot took her in the shoulder, spinning her around and slamming her into the wall with force that knocked the breath from her lungs. Pain. Immediate. Absolute. The kind that whites out thought and replaces it with pure, screaming nerve endings. But pain meant alive. Alive meant moving. Amara scrambled behind a support pillar, clutching her shoulder. The smell of burned flesh, her flesh, made her stomach heave. Okay, she gasped out. So we're doing this the hard way. Good to know. Last chance, the leader called out. Tell us where they are, and we make it quick for you. Here's my counteroffer. Amara slapped the emergency control panel beside her. You can go straight to hell. The facility's gravity plating fluctuated wildly as she overrode the safety protocols, sending several mercenaries stumbling. Not much. Not enough. But it bought seconds. She ran. Not away. That would have been the smart move. The survival move. She ran toward the storage area, toward where the mercenary with the thermal scanner was getting too close to the access panel. Grabbed a tool from the maintenance station and swung with everything she had. The mercenary's scanner shattered. So did several of his fingers. His scream was immensely satisfying right up until return fire caught her in the leg. Amara went down hard, momentum carrying her forward in a graceless tumble that ended with her sprawled across the debris pile, right on top of the access panel, covering it with her body. Oh, well, that was one way to protect it. Stay down! The leader was approaching, weapon raised. We will find them. You're just making this take longer. Good. Amara spat blood from where she'd bit her tongue in the fall. That's the plan. Make it take as long as humanly possible. Which, fun fact, humans are excellent at. We're stubborn like that. The thermal scanner was pulling multiple hits now. The mercenaries had triangulated the location. Underground. Beneath the storage area. Beneath where Amara was, currently bleeding all over the floor. "Move!" the leader ordered. "No. Move, or we move you." "You can try." Amara shifted, getting her good leg under her despite the agony from the wounded one. Her shoulder was a bonfire of pain. Her hands shook. She was going into shock, probably, which meant she had minutes before her body just gave up entirely. But here's the thing about this particular spot. You shoot me here, my body's going to jam up the access panel. You'll have to cut through me to get down there. That takes time. Time for them to get deeper into the tunnels. Time for maybe, possibly, a coalition ship to finally show up. No one's coming. Probably not. But you don't know that for sure. And every minute you waste on me is a minute they're getting farther away. She smiled, tasted blood. So, what's it going to be? You going to stand there and debate with the stubborn human? Or are you going to do something about it? The leader studied her for a long moment. Then he gestured to his team. Get her out of the way. Non-lethal if possible. We may need her to call them back. 3 mercenaries moved forward. Amara tensed. This was going to hurt. It hurt worse than she imagined. They tried grabbing her arms to drag her away. She fought. Not effectively, not skillfully, but desperately. Clawing, biting, kicking with her good leg. Human versus armored mercenaries was not a fair fight. It wasn't even a fight. It was a massacre. But it was a loud massacre. And it was a slow massacre. And every second they spent subduing her was another second the cubs had to hide. A rifle butt to her ribs. Something cracked. Amara's vision swam. She kept fighting. A boot to her wounded shoulder. The world went white with pain. She grabbed the boot and twisted with what strength she had left. "Just shoot her!" someone snarled. "This is taking too long." "No," the leader snapped. "We need her conscious in case they won't come out. Just get her off the panel." Finally, they succeeded. Dragged her away from the access panel, threw her against the far wall where she crumpled like a broken puppet. Amara tried to stand. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. Tried to crawl. Her arms gave out. She watched, helpless, as they pried open the access panel. Watched them drop thermal grenades down into the tunnels to flush out any heat signatures. Watched them descend, one by one, into the darkness below. No. No, no, no. Amara's hand found the communicator at her belt, the one connected to Null's unit. Her fingers were numb, uncooperative. Took 3 tries to hit the activation button. "Run," she whispered into it. "Don't stop. Don't look back. Just run." Static answered her. Then Null's voice, young and terrified. "Amara? Run, now, that's an order. They're coming. We can hear them in the tunnels. I know, so run faster than they can follow. You're Gwilora. You're faster than anything else on this planet. Run." "What about you?" Good question. What about her? Amara looked down at herself. Shoulder destroyed. Leg barely functional. Ribs broken. Going into shock. Blood loss making the world fuzzy at the edges. "I'm going to slow them down," she said. "One more time. Just need you to get to the old mining facility. Can you do that?" "Amara, no, just—" "Can you do that?" Harder now. Commander voice. The one she used when she needed them to listen and not argue. A pause, then, "Yes." "Good. Then do it. And Null? Tell Fricks and Poom that I'm proud of them. Proud of all 3 of you. You're good kids. You deserve better than this, than all of this. We're not leaving you. You're not. I'm staying." Amara was on her feet somehow, leaning against the wall. Gravity was a suggestion at this point. Now run, and don't stop until you're safe. She closed the channel before he could argue, before she could hear his voice again and lose her resolve. The maintenance tools, still within reach, including the plasma torch used for hull repairs. Amara grabbed it with shaking hands and stumbled toward the access panel. The mercenaries were down there, in the tunnels, chasing the cubs. Fine. Time for a human to remind them what desperation looked like. She dropped into the tunnel access, hit the ground wrong, felt something else break. Didn't matter. Used the plasma torch to weld the access panel shut from below. Trapped herself down here with the mercenaries. Trapped them down here with her. The tunnel was narrow, built for automated mining drones and equipment transport, not for large-scale troop movement. Perfect. Amara dragged herself along the passage, leaving a trail of blood that would make tracking trivial. Good. She wanted them following her, wanted their attention, wanted to be the loudest, most obvious target in these tunnels. Footsteps behind her, multiple sets, weapon lights cutting through the darkness. There, the human. She turned a corner, slapped the plasma torch against a support beam, cranked it to maximum output, and threw it as hard as she could. Not at the mercenaries. At the tunnel roof above them. The explosion was immediate and catastrophic. Ancient supports gave way. Tons of rock and metal collapsed. Amara felt the shockwave slam her into the tunnel wall, heard screaming behind her cut off abruptly. She'd just buried half the mercenary team, and herself. The dust settled slowly. Amara's ears rang. Everything hurt in that distant way that meant her body was done processing pain and had moved on to just cataloging damage for the inevitable failure report. A hand grabbed her ankle, dragged her backward. One of the mercenaries had survived the collapse, was pulling her back toward where the others were digging through rubble. Amara twisted, kicked with her good leg, connected with something soft. The grip loosened. She scrambled forward, deeper into the tunnels, no idea where she was going except away. The passage narrowed further, barely wide enough for her to squeeze through. Too narrow for armored mercenaries. Perfect. She wedged herself into the gap, a human bottleneck. If they wanted through, they'd have to go through her first. Literally. Move! The voice behind her was furious. Move, or we'll make you move. I've heard that threat before, Amara said to the darkness ahead. Didn't work then either. A plasma rifle shot hit the wall beside her head. Warning shot. Or maybe the mercenary was a terrible aim. Either way, the message was clear. Last warning, human. Step aside, or we put you down. Amara thought about the cubs, thought about Null's careful way of holding delicate objects, Fricks's habit of organizing everything by color because it made her feel in control, Poom's terrible jokes that he'd learned from human entertainment feeds, thought about them running through these tunnels, scared and alone, thought about them making it out, growing up, having futures. No, she said simply. The second shot wasn't a warning. It took her in the gut, just below the ribs. Felt like being hit with a shuttle. Amara's breath left in a whoosh. The pain was, this was different. This was the kind of pain that meant fatal, meant minutes, not hours. She slumped forward in the narrow passage, wedged tighter, made herself into an obstacle that would take time to remove. You insane human! The mercenary was trying to squeeze past, couldn't fit with his armor. Why? They're just animals, just predators. Why die for them? Because, Amara coughed, tasted copper, someone has to give a damn. Might as well be me. Another shot, this one through the lung. She felt it collapse, felt her breathing turn wet and labored. Time became weird after that. Seconds stretched or compressed. Hard to tell. The mercenaries were yelling, arguing. Someone suggesting they just leave her, find another route. Someone else insisting they finish it. More shots. Amara stopped feeling them. That was probably bad. She thought she heard thunder, except they were underground. Couldn't be thunder. The mercenaries were running. Away. Why were they running away? Voices. New voices. Coalition standard with military efficiency. Multiple contacts. Weapons fire, different from before. Coordinated. Professional. Someone was moving the rubble, coming closer. Lights, bright enough to hurt even through closed eyelids. Got a survivor. Human. Female. Multiple gunshot wounds. Massive blood loss. Oh hell, she's not going to make it. Hands, gentle despite the urgency. Lifting her. Carrying her. The narrow passage suddenly not so narrow because whoever was carrying her was cutting through rock like it was paper. Amara tried to speak. Managed a wet gurgle that probably wasn't intelligible. Don't talk. Stay with me. Medical team is on the way. You're going to be okay. Lies. Kind lies. The kind you tell someone who's dying. Cubs, Amara managed. 3. Gwilora. Tunnels. Safe. Make them. Safe. We'll find them. I promise. The world was fading, getting darker, colder. Amara's last thought, distant and oddly peaceful, was that maybe it was okay. Maybe this was enough. She'd bought them time. That was something. That had to be enough. It had to be. Commander Tallis stood in what remained of the tunnel and tried to process what he was seeing. The human diplomat, Amara, had wedged herself into a passage barely wide enough for a child. 16 direct hits. The medical scanner didn't lie. 16 separate plasma rifle shots, any one of the last 8 fatal on their own. And she hadn't moved. She turned herself into a barricade, his second-in-command whispered. Bought the Cubs time by making herself an obstacle they couldn't get past quickly. Tallis had been in combat for 23 years. He'd seen soldiers make last stands, seen people sacrifice themselves for their units, seen heroism in 1,000 different forms. He'd never seen anything like this. Status on the Gwilora juveniles? Found them in the eastern tunnels. Scared but unharmed. They're asking about her. Tell them. What? Tell them what? That the human who'd protected them was dead? That she'd taken punishment that would kill most species 3 times over just to buy them minutes? That the Coalition Elite Guard, the best of the best, had arrived 18 hours too late because some bureaucrat in command had flagged their distress call as non-priority? Tell them she succeeded, Tallis said finally. Tell them they're safe because of her. The medical team was already preparing the body for transport. Protocol? Procedure. All the official steps that felt obscene in the face of what had happened here. Tallis accessed his command logs. Found the timestamp on the original distress call. 18 hours. They'd had 18 hours to get here. Instead, they'd spent 16 of those hours waiting for authorization to deploy, because Gwilora refugees weren't considered strategically significant. Sir? His tactical officer approached carefully. The mercenaries we captured are talking. Wraith Collective, hired by anti-Gwilora extremist groups. This was an assassination contract. Wipe out the last Gwilora cubs to ensure species extinction. Understood. Tallis kept his voice level, professional. Process them through Coalition justice system, full charges. And the cubs, sir? Good question. Where did 3 orphaned predator juveniles go when the one person who'd cared about them was dead? Back into the system? Another forgotten outpost? Another diplomat who'd see them as a problem instead of children? They're coming with us, Tallis decided. Crimson Wing adoption protocol. We failed them once. We don't get to fail them twice. His team stared at him. Adoption of non-coalition military species by active units was virtually unheard of. Sir, that's an order. Anyone have a problem with that? Silence. Then slowly, one by one, his team shook their heads. Good, because someone just taught us what real courage looks like. Talus looked at Amara's body, at the evidence of a person who'd refused to move even when every rational instinct screamed to run. And the absolute least we can do is make sure her sacrifice meant something. He pulled up his command interface. Time to file some reports. Time to make some changes. Time to make sure this never happened again. 6 months later, the Crimson Wing outpost hummed with unusual energy. Talus watched from the observation deck as Nall ran combat drills with the precision of someone 3 times his age. Fricks was in the tech lab, her natural aptitude for systems analysis making her invaluable. Poom, despite his youth, had become the squad's unofficial morale officer, his terrible jokes somehow beloved by soldiers who'd seen too much darkness. They wore modified guard armor now. On each breastplate, etched in careful script, Amara, who stood. Commander. Lieutenant Graves approached, datapad in hand. The Council wants another report on the Nix Protocol implementation. The Nix Protocol, named for a mid-level diplomat who'd shown the entire coalition military what happened when bureaucracy valued paperwork over lives. Now, any distress call involving protected refugees triggered immediate military response. No committees. No authorization delays. No more 18-hour waits while people died. Tell them it's working exactly as intended. Talus pulled up the statistics. Response times down by 92%. Successful rescues up by 88%. Lives saved that wouldn't have been, all because one human had refused to move. They're also asking about the Cubs again. Questions about whether active military units should be, quote, daycare facilities for non-coalition species. Tell them, Talus said carefully, that the Cubs are training as coalition scouts. Tell them that Nall has the highest tactical assessment scores in his cohort. Tell them that Fricks cracked that encryption protocol our best analysts couldn't break. Tell them that Poom's language aptitude means he's fluent in 8 coalition dialects. And if they still object, then tell them that the Crimson Wing takes care of its own. And those Cubs became ours the moment we dug through that tunnel and saw what their guardian died to protect. Graves nodded, made a note. Also, sir, it's the anniversary. The Cubs want to go to Dustfall 6, to her memorial. Right, 6 months to the day. Talus checked his schedule, cleared it without hesitation. Prep transport. We're all going. The memorial on Dustfall 6 was simple. A plaque on the outpost wall, above the sealed tunnel entrance. Amara's last recorded message played on constant loop. Her voice matter of fact, even while bleeding out. To whoever finds this, the Cubs are innocent. They deserve protection, not persecution. They deserve futures. Make sure they get them. The Cubs, young adults now, stood in formation before the memorial. They'd brought offerings, protein ration packs, the kind Amara had stretched to feed them. It had become tradition. Human snacks for a human who died, making sure they had enough to eat. Nall spoke first, his translator crisp. We remember the human who didn't run, who taught us that strength isn't about teeth or claws, who showed us what protection really means. Fricks added, who made terrible jokes while fixing water systems, who rationed supplies but never hope. Poom's voice cracked slightly. Who called us Cubs like it meant family, who died so we could live. together. Someone gave a damn. It was her. Now it's us. Talus stood with his team, watching these young Gwalora honor a diplomat the coalition had forgotten. The irony was sharp enough to cut. They'd been trained to be the elite, the best of the best, the ones who arrived in time to save everyone. And they'd learned what real heroism looked like from someone who'd never held a weapon, never received combat training, never expected to be anything more than a mid-level bureaucrat babysitting the unwanted. She'd been more elite than any of them. "Commander?" Nall approached after the ceremony. "Permission to speak freely?" "Granted. We're opening a new refugee facility next month. Outpost volunteers needed." The young Gwalora's crystalline eyes were steady. "We'd like to go, to pay it forward." Talus felt something in his chest loosen. "Approved, but you're taking a full guard escort this time. We learned that lesson." "Understood, sir." Nall hesitated. "She'd be proud, right? That we're continuing her work?" "She'd be proud you survived," Talus corrected gently. "Everything else is just bonus. But yes, I think she'd be very proud." As transport lifted off, Talus took one last look at the memorial, at the forgotten outpost where someone had refused to forget, where a diplomat, with no weapons and no backup, had held the line. The universe was full of warriors, soldiers who fought and died for causes great and small. But sometimes, just sometimes, the real heroes were the ones who simply refused to move when everything said they should run. Someone had to give a damn. And the ripples of that choice were still spreading, would keep spreading, across a coalition that had finally learned to remember its forgotten corners. Because Amara had made sure they'd never forget again.